Hey everyone, it's Forrest Galante here from Animal Planet's Extinctor Live. I'm a wildlife biologist, and you're watching The Breakdown. First up, Ace Ventura.
Check this out. Look at that. That's a true albino pigeon. Some rich guy lost it. He's offering a $25,000 reward.
So I'm going to pause it right there. It's pretty funny just off the start. If you're somebody who lives in a city anywhere, you know that there's nothing that uncommon about seeing a white pigeon. You know, you see them every day. So just the fact that in this clip, Ace Ventura is looking for a rare albino pigeon that's worth 25 grand is absolutely hilarious. So it's a good start. Pause it right there. It's just so much fun. You know, the whole idea that Ace Ventura can wiggle the keys and all of the animals in his house that, you know, he's rescued or he lives among will all go and hide into various spots. It's ridiculous. It's not how it works. It's not how animals work. It doesn't matter if you're the best trained creatures in the world. Maybe you could get the odd dog to do it. But to get, you know, this cacophony of creatures that all live in this tiny one-bedroom apartment to all go and hide, it's absurd, it's hilarious, it's not realistic at all, and it's a ton of fun. As Ace Ventura blows the whistle, the first thing you see is the beagle coming running out, the dog. There's a toucan in the frame. There's a whole bunch of South American parrots, which is hilarious. Of course, these are common, you know, birds in the pet trade, but you certainly wouldn't want to have that many of them living in a small apartment. Now, my favorite part of the opening of this scene is the otter coming out of the toilet. That's an Asian small-clawed otter. They're absolutely hilarious, super inquisitive. Of everything and how unrealistic these clips are, the most realistic part of this is probably an Asian small-clawed otter hiding and playing in a toilet. Because they're just so mischievous, they're so playful, they're so much fun. They would absolutely hide in a toilet and pop out like that. I love that clip. It's super cute. Now, this is a trained animal, and each one of these animals that you're seeing are indeed trained animals. So it's amazing that they're capable of doing this on command for the camera, but it doesn't mean that they all did it, you know, in simultaneity when the whistle was blown. It doesn't work that way. You can be sure that when they were setting this up, they probably spent a day getting the skunk to pop out of the laundry, and another day getting all the birds to fly in, and another day getting the Asian small-clawed otter to pop out of the toilet. So it's beautifully done. It's really clever filmmaking, but it's not the way that animals work. The notion that this many creatures of this diverse of species could all live in a single one-bedroom apartment is pretty ridiculous. That being said, animals are incredible and they're adaptive and they're very, very trainable and they're very understanding. Like, could you have otters and parrots and puppies and skunks all living together? Absolutely. There's no big predators in that group. So they could all live in harmony, but they couldn't all live in harmony in a one-bedroom apartment. There's just not enough space for the amount of animals you're seeing. So Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, absolutely awesome movie. Everyone should watch it. It's tons of fun and it makes you love animals, but ridiculous to think that that many creatures could all be crammed happily into a one-bedroom apartment. Next up, Anaconda. Now, if you're working with anacondas, they don't have that build. You know, they don't have that kind of flexibility that you're seeing. What you're seeing in this frame here is this animal has maybe the back 1/8 of its body up in that whatever building structure is, and the rest of it it's holding up with its body weight. That's unrealistic. Those animals are not capable of doing that. All they can do is hold about 1/3 of their body up and off the ground at a time, the front third. And so seeing as maybe that's, you know, 6 or 7/8 of its body being held up, it's unrealistic. It's too skinny and it's too long. That's not the way anacondas look. Pause it there for a second. So there's two species of anaconda. There's green anacondas and there's yellow anacondas. Now, what I'm seeing here is neither, really. It's a red anaconda? I don't know. You know, I can see what they're going for. They're trying to make this look like the green anaconda, but it's got too much red. It's too dark. You know, maybe if the snake were about to shed and it was really, really old, it would have that dark a coloration, but really it looks too dark and the eyes look too humanoid. That's not a reptilian eye. And you can see why they've done that. As human beings, as bipedal creatures, when we look at another animal, we connect to them through, you know, eyesight, through ocular vision. And so when you see bigger, meaner looking eyes like what they put on the snake, it's instantly scarier than when you see the actual snake's eyes, which are far more kind of peaceful looking than this animal's. I'll hold it there for a second. So as you see, the snake wraps up with the back third of its body to coil its victim. Now, there's two pieces to this. The one part that's accurate is anacondas are indeed constrictors. They will absolutely wrap their prey, asphyxiate it by crushing the rib cage, and then consume it. But they will never ever lead with their tail. They do not have the ability to do that. When a constrictor snake attacks its prey, it leads with its head, latches onto something, and then uses that grip with its mouth to then wrap around its prey or victim. So the notion that it can just kind of use its tail like Indiana Jones whip and wrap around and then continue to do something else with its head is, well, just silly. Hold there for a sec. Now what you're hearing is an anaconda screaming. Now that's a real piece of movie magic for you right there, ladies and gentlemen, because there's no such thing. You know, I've caught hundreds of anacondas, I really have, and none of them have ever gone "Arr!" and growled or screamed at me. They just don't do that. The most noise that animal is capable of making is releasing air from its body to let out the hissing sound that we're familiar with in snakes, which is like a bit of a sound. But this whole notion that it growls and grunts as it's fighting with this guy, it's just complete add-in audio. There for a second. So now what you see is the snake's trapped in this net, right? But it's still got its two victims within its coil. Now you're really anthropomorphizing the animal here, and what I mean by that is this thing's out for vengeance, right? It's not even there to eat its prey, the two people. It's there just to kill them. That's why it won't even let them go in a net. Well, if you've ever caught any kind of wild animal, you know the second that it's under stress, it doesn't want to continue to try and feed. It doesn't want to continue to try and attack. It wants to get away. These are all things very far from real life. But if this situation were to happen in real life where you were being constricted by an anaconda and it hadn't latched onto you with its teeth and you were trapped in a net, the second that something dramatic like gunfire and nets were coming up and around it, it would release and do everything in its power to get away. Hold there. Now, the speed is really, really interesting. So the reason that anacondas get so big is because they live a long time. Anacondas, like many reptiles, grow until the day they die, right? As you get bigger and bigger, it makes it harder and harder to move. It takes more energy expenditure. So the largest anacondas that I've ever caught, the 21 plus footers, are so big and so heavy that out of water, they can barely slither. I mean, it's like you can see the amount of effort going into every motion. And here we have our 60-foot long anaconda. Of course, it's 3 times the size of anything in reality, but it's moving at this lightning speed. First of all, the bite's bad. A bite from a big snake sucks. They have a recurved tooth system like this, and when it goes down, they interlock, and then you're stuck within those teeth. So you really don't want to end up with a bite from a big boa or a big python like an anaconda. That being said, the bite's not the part that'll do damage. Sure, you're going to take these 3-inch long recurved needles into your body, but it's the coiling and the asphyxiation that creates a problem. You can get an anaconda to release from you, or any snake for that matter, by wedging something in its mouth and prying it open. But if you're attacked by a big snake like this, or a realistic one, you gotta get your buddies, which I've had do to me a couple times, run around uncoiling the thing as it's trying to wrap you up, because that's the dangerous part. If the snake feels like it's being attacked, it's not going to continue to try and consume you. The only reason a big snake is holding on to you is because it's trying to eat you. Otherwise, it's a defensive bite. It's a strike, bite, and release on their own. So if you're in the situation where they're already coiling up, it's because you're restraining it and it's trying to do some damage, or because it's trying to eat. Of everything I've seen, the most realistic kind of bite and coil, you see the snake there lunges forward, he grabs the guy by the shoulder, pulls him back into his own body, and starts to wrap around him. That's actually how the snakes do behave. Very different to what you saw earlier, where it used the back half of its body like a whip just to wrap around. That's complete nonsense. This is at least anatomically somewhat correct. Hold there for a second. This is actually pretty good. The teeth aren't bad. They're relatively anatomically correct. What I was talking about earlier, they're backwards facing. There's a lot of them, which is right. Now, these snakes can open their mouths up wider than the width of their body, which you're seeing him get ready to do here to consume the guy. It's actually not bad. Whoever scripted this probably had actually seen a snake eat something before. I've never been inside a snake, so I don't know how real that is. So when a constrictor consumes its food, it's almost always completely dead. In this case, the guy's feet are literally wiggling as he goes down the snake's throat. So, you know, no animal would do that at risk of injury to themselves, because if they're going to consume something that's clawing and scratching on the way down, it's going to do damage to vital internal organs. So You know, again, we're back to a little bit of Hollywood magic, but at least it's somewhat anatomically correct. They do feed from the head down, not from the legs up, so that part's right. He would go down head first. There would be that kind of bit of gulping that you're seeing the snake do. That part's all accurate, but the reality is the prey would already be killed by asphyxiation before the snake ate him. And then as you see, as the prey goes down, in this case the guy, its body's actually expanding to the size of the meal, and that's accurate as well. Snakes will do that. If you feed a snake something, it can eat something larger than its own head because its jaw can stretch so much, and their skin is stretchy enough that they can actually consume things bigger than them, and you'll see that big lump in them as it goes down. So in this case, what would typically happen is a big snake eats a big meal like that, it's going to get pretty lethargic. It's going to settle down. It actually can't have that meal disrupted too much. If it does, it will regurgitate it because there's so much whole food in there. It slowly has to kind of let the muscles work the prey down and get to the stomach acids, which will dissolve everything, including bone. The animal has to kind of chill in order to do that. So you can't have a snake that's gulping down, you know, a huge meal, aka a guy, and then turning around to gulp down the next three because it's just too much energy. They're not really capable of that. Now those are real anacondas for the first time. So that's kind of nice to see. In that scene, we've gone from our monster CG anaconda to a couple real green anacondas. These are likely from a zoo or a captive breeding facility. And you can see the difference in what I was saying earlier. You know, the coloration, you can see the marking. They're not jet black with those evil eyes. They're a nice, you know, pale green color, and they're very beautiful. They're very sleek. They're very shiny. And there we have the regurgitation I was talking about. So this is, I don't want to say correct, but it's not too far-fetched. If a snake were to eat a big meal like a guy like that, you know, of course it would kill him, and then if it got bumped and it was running around, there's too much energy exertion, it would just throw him back up. So watching the scene from Anaconda, look, it's not my favorite. It demonizes snakes, one of my favorite animals. They shouldn't be demonized. It's very fabricated for Hollywood. The behavior of the animal, the way it whips its tail around, the way it's out to actually get someone, it's silliness, it's not real. That being said, there's a couple relatively anatomically correct things. The kind of shape of the animal, the way that it does constrict its prey, the way that it bites, the way it has recurved teeth, all those things are correct. So it's a little bit of a balance, but overall it's not for the best. Next up, the Revenant. Bears scare me, man. I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of wildlife, and bears they're tough. And what you see here, the idea that Leonardo DiCaprio is hunting, and he's kind of dropped his guard, and all of a sudden the ferns start moving and this animal charges, totally realistic. Now the bear looks a little CG, but the behavior, totally realistic. You could be out in the woods, especially up in the far north, you're out hunting, the bear's onto you. It could be in the springtime when they're trying to store up fat, so they're willing to risk their own bodies in order to hunt a large meal like a human being or, you know, a caribou or something like that. And this whole idea of it hunting you, charging out of the bush, totally realistic. Hold there for a sec. Now, the way he's mauling Leonardo DiCaprio, again, seems pretty realistic to me. He's on top of him, he's overpowering him. Now, bears are highly intelligent, and they know if they're making a kill, that's the way to do that. So, again, it looks pretty real. He's digging in with his claws, he's doing a lot of damage in as efficient a manner as possible without letting any damage be inflicted on himself. So that is the way a bear would attack. I mean, this is a CG bear, but it's obviously supposed to be a grizzly or a brown bear. You know, black bears are much smaller. They wouldn't behave in this manner. They're far more timid. This is clearly supposed to be a grizzly bear. As opposed to CG sounds like in some of the other clips, these are actual bear sounds that have been put in. Now, they may have been kind of stretched and warped a little bit to fit the scene, but these are real bear noises. So if a bear is attacking like that, it's going to cut very, very deeply. Not just because of the sharpness of the teeth and the sharpness of the claws, but rather the jaw pressure and the immense amount of strength that that animal is putting into it. The teeth and claws, they're sharp, but they're no sharper than like your puppy dogs at home. It's just they have so much strength behind those teeth and claws that that amount of damage is, I mean, they're gouging really, really deep. Now this part I kind of don't understand, and what I mean by that is the bear's just standing over him, Now, I'm not to say that that couldn't happen, because it could. You know, a bear could be tired from making the kill, tired from the mauling and just catching its breath, just admiring its prey. But I don't know if it would need to, necessarily. This wasn't like a big battle for the bear. He kind of caught Leo, pinned him down, beat him up. Now it's time to eat, and he's not. He's just standing there for a second. It almost feels a little bit too prolonged, but certainly not outside of the realm of reality. A bear is going to attack for two reasons, right? The least likely is that it sees you as a prey source. That's very unlikely. The more likely one is that it's a defensive, aggressive attack. And what I mean by that is, say this is a sow, a female, and she has a couple cubs nearby, she will absolutely attack to defend her cubs. She thinks you're another big predator, and you are. As human beings, we're apex predators. That could be the case here, where the attack is simply a mauling. It's almost like a warning that does a lot of damage, and then she's going to leave it. She doesn't want to eat you, she wants to move on. So when a bear attacks, there's two mentalities, really. If it's a black bear, you want to be loud, you want to be aggressive, and you want to be dominant. And the reason being they're a little bit smaller and they're far more timid and shy. A grizzly bear like this, the accepted idea is that you play dead, and because once you play dead, the animal is done expressing dominance, right? It no longer feels threatened by your presence. So she's gonna leave you alone and go back to her cubs. So if it comes in, you can keep quiet and go limp. Obviously really hard to do, let the bear attack happen. Then the idea is she will retreat, go back to her cubs, and you can get up and run away.
Yeah, you can hear the cubs.
You can hear the cubs in the background? Great. So what that tells me straight away, this mother did not attack out of predation. She wasn't trying to eat Leonardo DiCaprio because she was starving. Instead, she felt threatened by his presence as another predator in her habitat, and she's protecting her young. So now she's come in, she's mauled him, he's rightfully played dead, or he's so injured that it seems like he's dead, and the bear's beginning to retreat. Now it looks to me like Leo begins to kind of sit up and say, what's going on? Is she gone? And that prompts another attack, right? She turns around and charges. And I think as he does, as anyone naturally would, he has a firearm and he fires. And so that, of course, inflicts injury upon the bear and provokes an ongoing attack. So overall in The Revenant, I would say the bear attack is the most accurate one that I've seen of all the clips today. All right, the gray. Pause this here. So now, now I'm gonna really rip them apart, because when you see Anaconda, you can kind of forgive the bad CG from 1997. I think the gray was made like 2 years ago. It's hard to forgive such bad animal CG in this day and age, when you got things like Avatar, where you're like, wow, this is incredible. And the first scene of the gray where I'm seeing this here, you've got this terrible black CG wolf with the dripping fangs and the huffing and puffing of breath. I mean, it's truly, we've created a monster. This is more of a werewolf than a real wolf, and that's a bit sad, because this is supposed to be telling a story of actual wolves. So this guy is doing the absolute wrong thing here. He's low to the ground, he's making eye contact with the animal, and then he's backing up. Like, you couldn't do anything worse. If you're threatened by a canine in a one-on-one standoff situation like that, you make yourself big, you lower your gaze so that you're not challenging it, because when you make eye contact with a canine, specifically a wolf, you're challenging it. That's a threat display. So drop eye contact, say, leave me alone, get big and get loud, and let the animal retreat. By being low to the ground, you're being small, you're not intimidating, and by retreating, that instantly triggers the attack response, because it says, I'm prey, I'm scared of you, right? If you're ever faced with an apex predator, you want to show them you're the boss. Whereas if you retreat, straight away they go, I'm in charge. So he's small, he's retreating, and he's threatening it. Like, he's doing everything wrong. If you were faced with this situation, you got 5 of your buddies hanging out and you're all staring off a wolf, if they all got loud and advanced at it, that wolf's not gonna stick around. You can't take on 5 full-grown people. A wolf's 100 pounds. That animal would turn and hightail it. But instead, they're standing off. They're actually inviting combat to this wolf, as opposed to just being aggressive, being the dominator, and making the animal retreat. All right, let's skip ahead. Pause there. So here we see Liam Neeson, he's in the den, right? And we're establishing that by movie magic. We see the remains of old animals. We see the animals underground. Now you can tell that he has actually put himself in too much of a threatening position. And what I mean by that is, a mother wolf, just like a mother bear, she's gonna do everything in her power to protect her cubs, pups in this case. And if you're in a wolf's den, that's a very bad place to be. No longer are you trying to trigger the fight or flight response from the wolf, but now you're the aggressor. You're putting yourself in a position where the mother has one option, and that's to get rid of you. there. Now, wolves are very social pack animals. They hunt as a pack, they work together, they work in unison, they use audio communication signals and body language signals, and they're actually doing a pretty good job of showing that here. Not only do you have all of the wolves surrounding Liam the way that a pack would when there was a single intruder, but you have the alpha male, the dominant male, the largest, strongest wolf, standing on the highest ground in the best attack position while the other animals watch. Now, if there's one animal that's going to advance over the others, the first one should be that alpha. Then would come in the support players, all of the other animals, and they know that based on the alpha's body cues. Now we're back to anthropomorphizing animals. We're giving them human qualities. What we're saying is the alpha is like our villain from a superhero movie, and he's like, all right, this one's mine, you know, you guys back off. No wolf's gonna do that. They're not stupid. Instead, his pack would stand there and watch, and he may be the first aggressor, the alpha male, but then the pack animals would join in as needed. Wolves are actually the most demonized animals throughout human history, dating all the way back into the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks, or hieroglyphics where a man would fight a wolf and we'd combat a wolf, all the way into cave paintings. And what's interesting is if you look into the records of it, there's only ever been something like 3 fatal wolf attacks on humans in history. In this frame right here, he's showing a lot of aggression, right? His brow is furrowed, his lips are curled back, expressing his teeth. He's locked on his gaze with Liam Neeson. These are all typical canine behaviors expressing a challenge, saying, you know, I'm here to fight you. And that part's quite accurate. What's not accurate is the way the animal looks. It just doesn't look like a wolf. It's too shabby, it's too dark, it's just too CG. So now another movie about wolves that I haven't seen, Alpha. Hold it there for a sec. So that's actually, you know, straight off the bat, it seems more realistic. I mean, one, the wolves are clearly still CG, but the way that the wolves are somewhat communicating, they're expressing dominance, you could see they're working together and they're hunting like a pack. That's how wolves do hunt.
Are black wolves a common thing?
Gray wolves come in a variety of colors, from basically pure white to pure black, and these gray and brown and tan colors that you see in between. In our minds, black wolves, like Black Panthers, are scarier and more evil, and that's why in Hollywood, they're the leaders and they're the biggest and they're the meanest. That's absolutely not the case in nature. So here you hear the animals howling as the kid's stuck in the tree. It's not unrealistic because wolves howl to communicate and signal to other packs and other animals where they are. But if they've got prey cornered in a tree, they probably don't need to howl to call others over. So it's kind of pretty and it's nice. I don't necessarily know that it's what would be happening. So a second ago, you saw the wolves howling while the boy was in the tree. And then the very next scene, the wolves are all gone. So that actually makes sense, right? So the wolves cornered this kid in the tree. They go, we can't get him. He's up there. We're stuck down here. Let me call and see where the rest of the family is, where the rest of the pack is. They howl. They hear in the distance, oh, the pack's 3 clicks to the left. I'm going that way. And they all take off. But the one animal that's left behind is, of course, the one that's injured. So now that's interesting because they have a real wolf dog in that clip, meaning an animal that's a hybrid between a real wild wolf and a domesticated dog, has more wolf traits physically. But they've used a real animal and they painted a bit of fake blood on it. And I already like this more than the gray because the kid's showing some compassion, right? He doesn't want to just murder the wolf. He knows that the wolf's an animal, it's a predator, it was trying to eat him, but now it's injured, it can't eat him, and they're leaving each other alone. I think in this situation, the wolf would be far more terrified and aggressive. I can understand it's very injured and it's probably dehydrated, so it probably doesn't have a lot of energy to be aggressive. But I think it would be growling and snarling if someone were to approach it. Keep in mind, this is an animal, of course, this is dated very long time ago. This is an animal that's likely never even seen a human being before. All right, and then he picks up the wolf, really nice, so now we're gonna fast forward a bit. So now they're buddies, right? He's swimming, he's playing with the wolf. Now, it's fun and it's enjoyable to watch, but wolves are not pets. They're just not wired that way. I've worked with a lot of wolves, even domesticated wolves. At no point could you be picking up and throwing a wolf around. They still have wolf behavior, they still have pack mentality, and that would be you trying to dominate an animal that otherwise wants to be dominated. Here, here, you see the wolf is dominant. You know, he's far more capable of hunting this wild boar than the kid is. I love that. I love that scene. You know, it's grounded in historical scientific theory, which is that wolves followed human beings, humans slowly domesticated wolves over generations, and then they worked together to hunt and feed. Here we've seen it all in the span of an hour in a movie, and really it probably took many, many generations, but it's great to see the idea the human and animal working together to benefit each other, and that's why dogs are man's closest friend. Love that. Absolutely love that. Pause that there. So here you see, right, the pack's returned. The wolf that's been with the boy, they've established a bond, and when the pack, the alpha from prior, the big black bad wolf, comes in to make the attack, he sees that the other wolf has become friends with the boy, so to speak, and the body language cues allow that other wolf to relax. I don't know that it would be that instantaneous as you see it here, but the idea that these animals are intelligent enough to say, hey, this is my pack, that's your pack, you know, let's not fight, is very great. And it's true, because animals do respond that way, especially canines that are as intelligent as wolves. Great. Love it. Now I think we're learning that that's a female. You see the gray wolf that the boy's been with, and then the big black wolf, they stand off, and then the big black wolf drops his guard. You know, the body posture relaxes, and the gray wolf comes in and nuzzles under his neck. It's a mate. They subtly do that in body language, and it's nice. It's well done. When you compare the gray and alpha, you see one movie that truly demonizes and villainizes wolves, and another movie where wolf becomes man's best friend. So for me, it's an easy choice as to what the better message and the better movie is. It's the one where we respect the animals enough to bring them into our home and have an understanding and learn from them. It's alpha. Next up, The Shallows. So I'm gonna stop it there. Okay, so there's a couple things here. First of all, we have Blake Lively on a surfboard, right? She is clearly getting picked off by a tiger shark. Great, accurate, done wrong. Absolutely, tiger sharks attack surfers. Now, tiger sharks attack a lot of things. They're known as the dumpsters of the sea, right? But the reason specifically the tiger sharks have been known to attack surfers is because when you're dangling your arms and your legs off your board, you look like a sea turtle, and that's tiger shark's favorite meals. You have a big round thing in the middle, your surfboard, which looks like a shell, and your four flippers bobbing around. So when tiger sharks do attack surfers, it's when they're paddling out or they're sitting in the lineup. The notion that this shark would actually come through a wave, risking its own safety to attack the board, is silliness. It doesn't look like a sea turtle, it's moving too fast, and sharks generally don't want to put themselves in the surf line. That's why, for the most part, you're safe swimming in the shallows, because sharks don't want to come into waves where they're going to get rolled up onto the beach and get their gills and everything else damaged. So it's good that it's a tiger shark. It's accurate that it's possible that it could attack a surfer. It's bad that it's doing when she's standing up on a wave at speed. Hold it there for a second. Look, having been bitten by 2 different sharks myself, never anything that bad, I can tell you that looks like the way that it would go, right? So the shark would never come up and knock her off her board. But at this point, where she's swimming, she's thrashing, she's making commotion on the surface, now she looks like an injured fish or an injured marine mammal or an injured turtle. The shark comes in for what they call an investigation bite. We have hands and fingers, right? If we want to figure something out, we pick it up and go, hey, check it out, this is a remote, right? If you're a shark, you're doing that with your teeth.
Where have you been bitten?
Yeah, I got bitten here this year when I was out doing Extinctor Live working with tiger sharks. This bite was from a lemon shark. This guy came and lunged at me to go for my arm, and I just pulled back and just caught a single tooth on the side of his mouth. If I'd been another second, that would have been my hand gone for sure. Is that a dead whale? Totally. So, all right, I'm gonna hold that right there. All right, now it's adding up, right? So now we've got a tiger shark that's attacking and eating because there's a dead whale. Now, there's 2 pieces to this puzzle. Will there be sharks around a whale carcass? Absolutely. But are they going to bother attacking something, thrashing and swimming around when they've got an entire whale to feed on? Questionable. That's why I say there's no right or wrong answer. They absolutely could. That instinct could be triggered. They could see that splashing and go, I want that fresh meal. Or they could be so full of whale and lazy and know that they've got this buffet lunch over here that they're not even gonna think about the thing surfing. That being said, if I'm finding a dead whale on a beach in Costa Rica, I'm not surfing anywhere near it. talk about a bad place to be trapped. Stuck on top of a dead whale floating in the ocean with a shark bite. So right there, I can see the bite on her thigh, right? First of all, that's in a bad place. There's some major arteries there that could be cut. You could bleed out. But the shark that I saw in the wave earlier, you're talking about a 13 or 14-foot tiger shark, right? The jaw of a 14-foot tiger shark's this wide. So if that's putting your thigh in its mouth, it's taking most of the thigh with it. You know, there are those investigation and release bites, like I mentioned earlier, but the way that it grabbed and pulled, that's going to rip flesh as it pulls down, right? So that bite is not accurate for the scene we saw earlier. What you're looking at is a bite of something that took a nibble that's maybe 5 feet long, as opposed to something that's 15 foot long and dragged her underwater. That entire thigh would be missing based on the scene we saw earlier. All right, I've never seen Jaws, so let's watch the ending of it. Let's hold it there for a second. You can see this toilet paper roll of a shark that's launching out of the ocean and basically sinking the back of the ship. Now that's grounded in the thought that, you know, sharks like in Seal Island, they'll launch out all the way to kill prey. I get that, but no shark is ever going to attack a boat that's 4 times the length of it and beach itself to try and sink the boat. You're putting way too much faith in the animal's intelligence and desire to get something off of that boat.
What about the way it looks?
Yeah, you know, it's not bad. It doesn't look great, but, you know, the white around the jaw, the size of the teeth, the pointiness of the snout, it looks like a great white shark. It doesn't look fake. Chomping on board bits? I don't think so. The notion that this animal would just be sitting up on the bow, on the stern of the boat, just flopping its head back and forth like Pac-Man, just kind of hungry hipposing anything that falls down the boat is cartoonish. I can't think of any other way to describe it. That animal would get one bite of net and board and be out of there in a heartbeat. It doesn't want to eat those things. This is graphic. There for a second. So, all right, look, let's break it down. We've got this monster murderer great white, right? He's way too big. He's way too plastic. He's smart enough to body slam a boat to sink it and then go hungry hippos on everything that falls into his mouth. And then he gets a bite of flesh, right? Whatever it is, it's this guy. He's gonna chomp it and then he retreats. I mean, there's so many things wrong with it, right? A shark would never behave like that. It's never gonna put itself in that much risk. But more importantly, I think, big picture is why? Why would this animal do that? That is so much more work than swimming, you know, a couple feet away to the seal rookery and grabbing himself a nice tasty snack. It's funny to even consider this reality, and maybe in the 70s when this movie was made and we had a very poor understanding of shark behavior, then sure. But nowadays we know that great white sharks have no interest in eating people. If you swim with great white sharks in clear water, they're not going to attack you. They know that you're not on the menu. The only instances where people get attacked by white sharks are when they're either provoking them or when there's a case of misidentification, usually because the water is very dirty. So this whole notion is pretty ridiculous. So I've now seen clips of Jaws, clips of The Shallows, 2 movies I've never seen before, but I've now seen the clips of them, and thumbs down from me as far as wildlife behavior goes. All right, this is Jumanji. The big mean crocodile. Let's hold that there for a sec. So I've worked with a lot of crocodiles, and I've never seen one with Stegosaurus spikes coming off of his back like that before. That thing is ultra mean. But, you know, this is a fantasy movie. Nobody's saying that this is, you know, the actual wilds of Africa. He goes to a whole new world called Jumanji, and maybe in that world, these animals do behave differently, and they have big back spikes. I know it's a crocodile. It's not an alligator. There's a couple of reasons. One is we're seeing all African animals in Jumanji, right? There's no alligators in Africa. But secondly, crocodiles are the ones that are dangerous to people. Alligators don't hunt large mammals like people, but in this situation, in the Jumanji film here, this animal is actually actively hunting Robin Williams and family. So when he turns the corner, based on the fact that he's from Africa with all the other African animals and he's hunting people, this is a croc. I'm gonna hold it there. So here's something kind of funny. Now, everybody's going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but of all these movies that I've seen, the comedy Jumanji movie with the fake croc from the alternate universe of Jumanji is probably the most realistic in behavior so far. I've seen and been hunted by crocodiles. Obviously, they haven't got me, but I've seen them hunting, and that slow motion along the surface, that keeping the eye level down to the water, that totally cueing in on the prey source, That's all really accurate as far as how a crocodile would actually come in to attack something. Even the bite and the attack there, dropping underwater before attacking the prey so that the prey doesn't know which direction it's coming from, coming up, jaws open for the bite, it's pretty good. Let's just hold it there. Crocs are very mobile and they're very agile. He's not just gonna sit there while something's pushing on his jaws. He's gonna do one little flick of the head and he's got you no problem at all. So the idea that stay away from the pointy end using your feet to keep the jaws away, that absolutely wouldn't work. Hold there for a sec. Now, interestingly, when you think of telling these stories of these big scary animals, like we saw in The Gray, like we saw in Jaws, and like we saw in Anaconda, all those animals are supersized. Like, they're way too big. They're double the size, or in the case of Anaconda, 3 or 4 times the size what the animals actually get to. This one's not. When you see a crocodile this size, where his head takes up most of Robin Williams' torso, that tells me that you're looking at about a 20-foot crocodile, which is very real. There are 20-foot crocodiles out there. So at one point you see, Robin Williams has his arms around the crocodile's jaw. Now, interestingly enough, he could actually do that. The animal has an incredible bite force going down, but they do not have a lot of muscles for opening their jaw. I've been able to hold like 15-foot crocodile's jaws shut just with 2 hands like that. So holding the animal's jaws shut, the animal's now in trouble, right? So it goes into typical crocodile behavior, something called a death roll. And you see that as he submerges with Robin Williams, and you see it start to roll. Now, when a crocodile attacks, what it does is it bites onto something, and then it rolls, and it rips the flesh or rips the limb off something, and then the animal bleeds out and it eats. So they use it as a defensive mechanism as well, as you're seeing here, to try and shake Robin Williams off of the croc. So it's actually pretty good. It's actually anatomically pretty correct. So I've watched a bunch of the clips now, and I've seen a lot of different stuff. Some of it's anatomically correct, some of it's correct in behaviors, but overall what I've seen is a demonizing of animals, which I really don't like to see, because animals are wonderful, incredible creatures, and I can understand why you do that. It tells a good story and it makes for a good movie, but as long as people can realize the difference between how great animals really are and a Hollywood animal, I think you're okay.